A presentation on the concentric zone theory by Morgan Howard. The concentric zone theory originated in the 1920s by Ernest Burgess and Robert Park from the University of Chicago. They sought to explain why the socio-economic divides in and out of the city existed. The model was first based on the city of Chicago's layout, however it doesn't apply to the city today. This was the first theory to explain the distribution of social groups among a city. In a city that follows the concentric zone theory, social structures extend outward from one central business area, which would be Area A on the diagram. Population density also decreases as you extend towards the outward zones. This shows a correlation between socioeconomic status and the distance a person lives from the central business district. The idea behind the model is that those who can afford to commute live farther on the outside rings, and the more poverty-stricken people live closer to the central business district. This model is also known as the Burgess model, the bullseye model, the concentric ring model, or the concentric circles model. The concentric zone model is broken down into 5 different zones. The first zone, the innermost, is the central business district. The second outward zone is the transitional zone. The third zone is the working class zone and single-family homes. The fourth zone is the residential zone, consisting of single-family homes and those who have enough space for yards and garages. The outermost zone is the commuter zone, those who can afford to commute into the city for work or pleasure. Zone 1 is the central business district. This is the non-residential center for business and commerce. This is often considered the downtown area. It's commuted to by residents of other zones for work. Common buildings in the central business district are government institutions, businesses, stadiums, and restaurants. Zone 2 is a zone of transition. It is considered to be the least desirable place to live in the city. It consists of dilapidated housing and infrastructure, and a large percentage of the population rent as they cannot afford to own their own homes. The zone of transition also has the highest crime rate in the city, and it also has the highest rate of people moving in and out of this zone. In his report in 1928, Ernest Burgess described the zone of transition as a melting pot of poor, immigrant, destitute, and criminal. Zone 3 is home to the working class. This zone consists of older homes occupied by stable, working class families. These are the people who can afford to move out of Zone 2, however cannot necessarily afford to move farther out of the city. A large percentage of the people here rent as well. Also, a lot of the residents of this zone are second-generation immigrant families who may have previously lived in the zone of transition. Zone 4 is home to the middle class. These are newer, more spacious homes that are less likely to be rented by the well-educated middle-class families that reside in them. This area is also getting into what is commonly known as the suburbs. The farthest outermost zone is Zone 5, the commuter zone. The residents of this zone are considered mostly upper class, who can afford to commute into the city for work or entertainment. These are also considered to be the suburbs. So, what do these theories have to do with crime? Well, in the 1930s, Clifford Shaw and Henry Mackay were inspired by the work of Park and Burgess and set out to create their social disorganization theory. They noted that poverty-stricken areas have a higher rate of crime than those farther outward. Zone 2, the zone of transition, is distinct in its impoverished condition. The homes here are dilapidated and abandoned, the education standards are low, and crime is abundant. Drug dealing, drug addiction, and prostitution are common on every street corner. This area also has the highest resident turnovers than any other area. This leaves the community unstable and ever-changing. Also, when the model was created, the zone of transition was home to many immigrants. So there were many different languages and many different cultures represented in one small area. Due to this, residents didn't know what their neighbors were saying and didn't have the same sense of community that those who live in the more suburban areas did. The outer circles also adapted to conventional norms. These norms consisted of respect for law enforcement and an interest in community. Because of the reasons stated previously, the residents in Zone 2 did not have the same sense of community and did not adapt to the same conventional norms. Residents in this area were continuously ignored and disenfranchised as well. This led to the reasons as to why housing was run down and infrastructure was abandoned. This leads to social disorganization because the residents have lessened respect for their community and less respect for each other. Therefore, crime is abundant. However, there are several problems with this theory. The model does not work with more modern cities or cities that exist outside of the United States due to either cultural differences or just differences in their layout. The model also assumes an unchanging landscape that does not adapt with time. The model also assumes that the city exists on flat land without geographic features such as mountains, rivers, or lakes inhibiting growth in a certain direction. Finally, the model does not account for decentralization of business areas. In more recent times, business has not been concentrated in one area, and it has been spread out throughout cities more evenly. Along with the information learned in class, I also received more information on the concentric zone model from the Lewis Historical Society, an article written by Joan Bunny, and from a Weebly website, Crime in Place by Ashley Peck. Thank you for listening to my presentation.